Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So there's actually, just before we do this, there's one thing that I wanted to do, which is say a massive thank you to Emma, to Asta, to Emma, to Katie for huge, fantastic organisational skills. So thank you very much. It's been a total joy to work with. So yeah, thank you. Right, so barriers. The top one is lack of time to submit an application. So has anyone got anything that they want to say about that? Yeah.
Everybody hear me okay? Yeah. I think I touched on it in my presentation. I think looking at what pre-support is available. So there's the RSS who can, we were talking about this at lunch, who can provide some kind of PPI funding to the preliminary work for your research. And the pre-application support fund is dedicated time out to prepare the application. So I think the support is out there. If you've got a project in mind, then I think that is the biggest barrier I feel is the time to actually write a competitive application, but there is funding out there. So certainly check the NIHR Academy website for that.
I think a couple of practical points. The first is that don't underestimate the time it takes. So start early. The second is around time can be ring fenced and you have a structured post. That was one of the points I made in my talk about identifying structured training posts. So in medicine, that includes an ACF, but it's not limited to ACFs. It's also clinical teaching fellows and other standalone posts. In nursing, midwifery and allied health professions, there'll be a range of internships and other opportunities where you can look for time, where you can identify time to start working on the initial part of a project. Would that be fair?
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's a new NIHR scheme as well, pre-fellowship funding stream.
Yeah, the pre-application.
The pre-application, yeah, there's a pre-application stream.
It is. It is.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. And the other thing is at York in our health sciences department, we often build time in to job plans for research fellows, not necessarily clinical ones, to help them develop NIHR fellowships. And we have around a 50% hit rate with our fellowships, which is probably higher than 1 in 10, 11, probably because we support them to do it.
So Jane and then Cecily and then Bakita. Sorry.
So just to quote the wise words of Chris McManus, that applications that don't get put in don't get funded. So if you really want to get your application funded, there's something called JFDI, and a lot of that is just do it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Cecily.
Yeah, I think from a PPI perspective as well, I've been approached when like the funding call is so tight and it's very difficult to add kind of really meaningful PPI. But I guess it's about thinking about what patient and public involvement and forums or mechanisms might be around. As what's been said in terms of approaching research support service, who also have public contributors who can make comment, but it's obviously also really good to have public contributors who are actually commenting on the content, as well before that. But this is something that does come up a lot in some of the different, so say like with the, came up in an ARC applied research collaboration, is that? Yeah, ARC and national, the National Research Support Service strategy meeting in terms of saying to NIHR representatives, take that back because it's too tight. So I think it's something that people do keep pushing back to NIHR and say you've got to be quite realistic, and it poses problems, especially for PPI, meaningful PPI as well.
Yeah, thank you. Bakita.
One of the things that helped me when I was applying for the doctoral research fellowship is that some of you already know that I was already in a pre-doctoral fellowship, so that was protected time. But even when I applied for the pre-doctoral fellowship, I was already placed in the department that I was seeking to kind of embark the next stage of my career within. So I had informal conversations with future and current supervisors that although there may not be that kind of formalized protective time from another award or a separate award, there was an informal way in which they supported my application whilst I was still in the qualitative research role that was my first role in that department.
Yeah, great. Sophie.
Just to extend what Cecily was saying in terms of your Gantt chart of getting organised about what you're going to do when, just think about all the tasks that you need someone else to help you with. So finance costing, or whether it's having conversations with stakeholders or PPI or supervisors that need to do a report to include, push all those right to the front of the project. And then at least you're leaving everybody else that's got to do something, some time to do that in order to get to your deadline. Don't leave those to the last minute.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's really true. The other thing I suppose is that there are, I think, set times, aren't they, when fellowship applications open. So you can know, and you can be thinking about your application before that window opens, so that, as Sophie says, you're kind of ready to hit the ground running when it does open. So and that's, I guess, a question of looking on the website. And there is a thing on the website that's upcoming openings as well, isn't there?
There is, yes, there's open calls and what's coming, but we keep them the same every year. And although the application was only open for around 6 to 7 weeks, we announced well in advance that it's going to open. So there's a lot more time to prepare in that sense.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I think, Ryan, you did talk about this a bit before, but the next top answer is unsure what NIHR is looking for. So what are the key things that NIHR is looking for, please?
So I suppose it's, from my perspective, working in the fellowships team, it's looking for the next generation of future leaders rather than researching a specific area. I think our role is to develop people at any point in the career path to become a future leader, healthcare research. So I think there's been a lot more funding recently for healthcare professionals, supervised AHP. So that shows an area. So I talked about them in my presentation about the different schemes for those professions. And I think, so that's a priority, but the overall goal of the fellowships is to build capacity rather than any kind of specific, we want to fund X.
Yeah. Thank you. Just kind of coming back on that, and also slightly your point, Gillian, that you said slightly in a joking way, but I know you also meant about clinical education research being a priority. Somebody said, concern NIHR won't prioritise education PhDs when there are so many clinical applications. And I think I remember you saying to me, Paul, when I was applying, you're going to be competing with people who are curing cancer, curing blindness. So how do you, is that true that NIHR won't prioritise education over something like that?
And I don't think it is at all. I really don't. I think the numbers on your presentation, Bill, about was it 3 or 4 out there? I think that does represent the number of applications as well. It's not that you don't fund it. I think that would be a positive, that slightly in line with the number of applications within the education research field. I think certainly things we can do more of, and that events like this, raising awareness and events on, so people know it's eligible. Yeah, just behind the promotion, but it certainly is within remit.
It's definitely within remit. I think it's a really great time to be thinking about clinical education fellowships. There's so much change, and there's so many different subjects and so many important subjects that have the widest impact on the largest number of people. And I just was going to make the point about person, place, project, in terms of making a successful application. So you need to demonstrate that you are progressing. It's really important to have the right team around you. So as part of that preparation, it's important to look for the right person that's going to supervise, because the panel will be looking for, is this a fellow who will have the right supervisory support? Not always the highest eminent person, but someone who is actively involved, is skilled, but also will give that trainee, that fellow, and the time that they need. And of course, the project, which I would suggest that it's never been a better time to be thinking about clinical education work. But just to make sure that the writing demonstrates the value to the NHS, the value to social care, the value to society.
Yeah. Cecily and then Paul. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just hello. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you said there, Gillian, in terms of being a good time in terms of clinical education research. I've seen with a lot of communities actually a lot more distrust, especially after kind of COVID and pandemic. There's been a lot more distrust. So in terms of health inequalities, I mean, we've seen the same kind of health inequalities, and actually they look like they're kind of getting worse. And we've had so many advancements in technology. I'm just thinking, how does that happen? And I think from a perspective of patient and public involvement, and I've had this analogy when communities have had so much distrust, they kind of think all research is research. And from a patient perspective, they're not really understanding that it's a bit different from being a participant. So it's almost as if that, take an analogy in terms of if you go to a restaurant and you keep getting food poisoning, why would you want to go back? So I see patient and public involvement like getting into the kitchen and helping the chef to look for the right ingredients and shape the menu and so forth. So I think with clinical education research as well, because it's not necessarily about, okay, there's this trial and, you know, it's more around the learning education. People feel a bit more safer in terms of, okay, this is something I could kind of get involved in and see what's going on. And also from a perspective in terms of, I want to know that interprofessional relationships within healthcare, you know, I want to know that students are being trained around that. I want to know that students are being trained in terms of how they might, you know, they can not be judgmental or can be more empathic or compassionate. So when I'm receiving my healthcare, I'm quite confident that I'm receiving healthcare which is going to be compassionate, and I'm going to feel like I can heal rather than being in pain all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, Paul.
I was just going to say, yeah, NHR is all about patient benefits. And so if you're a clinical education workforce researcher, we can articulate a clear narrative about why our work is going to deliver patient benefit. People don't always do themselves just that. And when I said that to Kat, I wasn't trying to discourage you. I think, looking back, I think I was exhorting you and encouraging you to make that narrative clear so that you could compete with, you know, the oncologist or the heart surgeon, whatever, who we're competing against for these things. Yeah, and so I think, yeah, I think we need to articulate that clear link with patient benefits. The other mistake people make preparing for NIHR fellowships, I've been through the cycle a couple of times myself, and I've helped a lot of people through various stages of NIHR fellowship. Other funders are available, I should point out. A lot of the time they're focused really on the project, and they think it's all about the science of the project, and they neglect the personal development plan. And that is probably, I don't know whether it still is, but that used to be one of the main things people failed on. So you really have to articulate, like Jill was saying, this thing, what you've done already and why you're on this trajectory to be kind of a superstar, research leader, clinical education, whatever research leader. And so it's really about that narrative about how you're going to deliver patient benefit, but also scale it up as a research leader, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. So that brings me on actually to the next barrier, which has been upvoted a few times, which is lack of confidence. And I think, I talked this morning about my own kind of lack of confidence in my abilities. And I think it's quite intimidating to be told, we're looking for the next research leaders, we're looking for the next superstars. You think, is that really me? So what tips have you got for how applicants can build their confidence?
I kind of feel like I should start.
Yeah,
Looking
thanks,
at
Jane.
me. But do you know what? Do you know what? I don't feel confident to answer. And I think you reach a stage, and this is a quote from Sally Davies, the former chief medical officer in your life, that sometimes you've just got to hold your nose and jump. And sometimes there's something that you're interested enough in that you have just got to not listen to the naysayers, not listen to your inner voice that's telling you that you're not good enough, because actually sometimes the biggest barrier in applying for something like this is yourself. So you have to get over that. And one of the things that I was going to mention in relation to the other question, but in medical education and research, the impact that you have if you make an intervention that changes things is absolutely huge. So remember that it's difficult to do where it's a Cinderella subject, but if you get it right, and if you change the way that a particular kind of education is delivered or happens, or come up with a new way of doing something, and it can get rolled out, the impact of that is absolutely enormous. So don't feel underconfident. Try to just take the wise words of Sally Davies this time and hold your nose and jump.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, Bakita, actually. Oh yeah, great. Thank you.
I definitely agree with holding your nose and jump. A few times I've said you've just got to do it, like just apply. You've got to be in it to win it. And also one of the other thing that also helped me as well is your network of people who know your career and your academic past so far. They can also help you in bringing out kind of the necessary adjectives and the necessary phrasing that presents you as a superstar. So one of my former mentors, she almost rewrote my personal statement, because she's like, you're totally playing yourself down. You need to say this, 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 and this. And she'd worked with me in enough different ways and knew my character enough that she could draw out some of the things that I was not as confident to frame. So also share your application with people who know how to go through the application process and to actually know you on an individual level and know your past accomplishments.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to agree with Jane. I think all of us, I know I for sure, as someone who entered clinical education research as a second career, my PhD was in laboratory early life origins of allergies. So, you know, so imposter syndrome is something that I've carried with me for the last 10, 12 years. And so I suspect the unconfident person, many people lack confidence, and you're not alone. I was going to make a similar point about having a critical friend, someone who is experienced in processes, who are unbelievably helpful to review grants, fellowships, and change the language into the sort of language that NIHR are used to and wish to read. But there's also that wider network, and there's nothing quite like having friends in your department, friends in the wider community. And one of the beautiful things about clinical education is that it's a very friendly, supportive community, and people genuinely want to aid and support your career development.
Yeah, Sophie.
Just to add that you don't have to be an expert at everything. And so if there's one thing that you're passionate about, then go for it. And it doesn't matter if you're not an expert in X, Y, and Z. If you're going to position yourself in relation to one particular thing, just do it. And then people will start seeing you as an expert in something, and then it will grow and you'll learn more.
So yeah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just on the Joe mentioned the imposter syndrome. So at the NIHR Academy conference last year, we had a keynote speaker who talked, an awardee that had talked about imposter syndrome, give all the feelings of, she basically said, oh, I got the award, and then thought, oh, they made a mistake, get the run kind of thing. And then said to the entire audience, who else felt like this? And the vast majority of people in the room that were all Academy members, all awardees, all put their hand up. So everyone feels the same. And it's not until doing it.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. And one of the things I think that can help is talking to people about your application as well. So it being something that you are, instead of it being a sort of secret idea that you have to yourself that you may or may not have the confidence to do. When you start talking to people about it, then A, it becomes more realistic that you're actually going to do it, but also people start offering you help. And one thing that happened to me that made a really big difference was I spoke to somebody who worked in the hospital at UCLH, and she said, oh, there's a small fund that the RDS, as it was, now RSS London, run. The deadline's tomorrow, and you can apply for some funding to pay patients to help you with your application. So I was like, oh, crikey, all right, well, it's tomorrow, so I just better bash something out and hope for the best. And I got the money. And then what that meant is that obviously I got all the input that the patients gave me, but I also had something to put on my application, which was I've got some funding from NIHR, and it made me feel so much better and much more confident. So I think, you know, if there are small wins, you know, that you can get, it doesn't have, you know, that are kind of building your path towards that application, then that can make a big difference as well. Right, we've got one last one, which is popular, so I'm going to say it. I don't know what people's thoughts are on it, or how we can respond to this. It's an NIHR issue, I think, but so many acronyms. Feels quite a closed community. If you don't understand the language, you feel an outsider, that this is not for you. So I think that definitely resonates with me. Yeah, your hand came straight up, Cecily. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I think it's in this situation as well, that's why it's really useful to have patients and public, because we're not scared to ask about acronyms, and you know, there might be other people who want to ask questions, but you know, we'll just go out and ask it. So having patients, public, carers and so forth around, it really helps, because we will just ask those questions. So that's why I say, you know, don't like just put us aside just yet, because we have our uses.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Ryan, go on. I'll give you the last word on that.
Just that. I agree. I think I don't know all the acronyms of the NHR, so it's definitely not that it's a closed community and anything like that. I think it just shows that breadth and depth of it. I think I mentioned in the presentation, I think it's 6,000 academy members. So it's definitely wide, it's open. I think there's a lot of work going into research inclusion going on at the moment. So it's only get better, hopefully. But yeah, I think everybody's the same with the acronyms. There meetings for everything. There's several. So yeah,
Right.
Work on an acronym list. Advice.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're out of time, so I just want to say another big thank you to all of you for coming and to the speakers. So for the last time, we're going to hear stop recording.